What is modernity? How do we define it? The modern world has new things. It has iPhones, it has computers, it has drugs designed to match individual genetic profiles. Looking further back, it has cars, microwave ovens, television, radio, telephones, and railroads. To some of these earlier developments, I will turn toward the end of this session. Now, however, I'm going to talk about modernity as a set of values, as a state of mind, as a cultural condition. This is to say I'm interested to draw your attention to the ways in which the very definition of what it was to be a scientist changed the very way that people thought about themselves, about knowledge and its uses, and even about time itself. That change in self-understanding and in the meaning of time, to which we will turn at the end of this session, is what defines modernity. To understand this change, we need first to outline a new social type, the scientist. Boyle, Newton, and even Darwin were not scientists. They were philosophers. Earlier, science came from a Latin term meaning systematic and objective knowledge. For instance, geometry. Systematic knowledge allows you to be a truly free citizen. But by contrast, is mere opinion. So experimental knowledge in the 17th century was seen by some as not being scientific because it was not morally absolutely certain. As a consequence, Isaac Newton made a conscious effort to cast natural knowledge into a deductive mathematical form in his book, The Principia. But later on in the 18th and 19th centuries, philosophy and science came to be, in many cases, synonyms, referring to experiential, experimental knowledge of nature. This culminated with the creation in 1831 of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. This reflected the increasing use of science to mean mechanical, utilitarian knowledge of a kind suited to industrial society. The base case we will consider here is physics. Some objected to this on the grounds that morality was also a science. It too relied on observation and judgment. The invention of the term scientist was in the 1830s, and it marked out the professionalization of inquiry and its division into specialist branches. This came with the invention of the scientific experts as a person qualified to speak to particular topics. In contrast, the laity were understood as not qualified to speak, and laity now included generally educated people. So while the previous ideal of the scientist was somebody who was not mercenary and philanthropic, the new ideal was a scientist with specialized, technical, certified, and devoted to the advancement of particular knowledge. The term scientist was invented by the mathematician William Whewell in 1834, but he had opposition, for instance, from Michael Faraday, who saw himself as an experimental philosopher, or from Lord Kelvin, who saw himself as a naturalist. So not only was the term scientist opposed, so too were its subdivisions. Lord Kelvin, born William Thomson, known for his discovery of conservation of energy, proposed that people use the term naturalist, as defined in Johnson's Dictionary of 1755. He argued that naturalist should be understood as a person well-versed in natural philosophy. So hence, he refused to accept so un-English and unpleasing and meaningless a variant from old usage as the term physicist. So not only did people object to the word scientist, they also object to the word physicist. Brits often assumed that the term scientist came from the United States. For instance, Alexander Ellis, president of the Philological Society, called the term scientist an American barbarous trisyllable. In 1894, a public debate on the term scientist appeared in the journal Science Gossip, launched by its editor, J.T. Carrington. He asked 8 prominent figures about the term and got 7 replies. They were hostile. For instance, Thomas Huxley wrote in that the term scientist is as pleasant as the term electrocution. However, in effect, from 1900 to 1910, the term scientist came to be a term of honor. It was sought, but it was sought by the non-natural disciplines, for instance, by social scientists, by domestic scientists, by political scientists, by linguistic scientists. Why was this? For the answer, we look to Max Weber. Weber was one of the first modern sociologists. He was a theorist of modernity. In his talks, Politics as a Vocation and Science as a Vocation, first given as speeches in the Munich University in 1918, Weber is concerned with a task he calls the disenchantment of the world, which was the increasing compartmentalization of natural things and processes into specialized sciences, and to their explanation in terms of non-mysterious and natural forces. He noted that as individuals, we don't understand, but we feel that in principle we could understand anything. So science is both specialized and progressive. It is inevitable that good scientific work will be obsolete in a few years. We should compare this situation to art and to industry. Art is never superseded, and industry is wrongly said to not need inner spirit. So what is the value of science, Weber asked. Science, he said, can't answer this. It epitomizes a strong fact-value distinction. In fact, science, he says, is meaningless. So the only question that remains is the sense in which science gives us no answer at all to the question of science's value. But in not asking this question, science presupposes the worth of knowledge, for no discipline examines its own presuppositions. For instance, medicine doesn't ask whether life is worth living, nor does jurisprudence ask whether laws are worth having. So there can be no scientific answer to whether or not scientific knowledge is worth having, or whether one should be a scientist. Instead, what you need is a faith, or a calling, or a vocation. Science does give certain things. It gives clarity, a mental toolkit, personal honesty, a set of rules to live by, such as the fact-value distinction, and a sense that this is a moral virtue. And these things are manifest in small, quiet ways. For instance, in individual contributions to experimental knowledge, in giving lectures to students that are dispassionate and even-handed, in giving lectures that don't try to give students a political line where none is scientifically defendable. So modernity is defined then by the creation of this new kind of person, the disinterested expert, the specialist, a person devoted to the discovery of knowledge for its own sake. What this means is that science is linked to progress, and that the world now is different than the past, and that tomorrow will again be different. So modernity is about newness for its own sake. The new vision of science and of the modern is about progress. The world now is different than in the past, and tomorrow will again be different. We know new things that will soon be obsolete. We also have experts of many, many types, more types every day, more types every year.